It started with a crack, not a tremor, not an explosion, just the sound of something beneath the city snapping, like concrete trying to breathe. I was crossing the street downtown, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, when the ground beneath my feet shifted. A low vibration rippled through the asphalt, like a slow pulse, and people around me stopped and looked down, uncertain whether to panic. Then the street split open. A jagged line tore through the intersection, sending chunks of pavement upward like a ripple through black water. I jumped back as a section of the sidewalk crumbled, and from the fissure rose something wrong. Not smoke, not steam. A root. It coiled upward like a snake, thick as a fire hydrant, glistening, alive. It pulsed with a dull orange light, as if something inside it was burning, breathing. Someone screamed. Cars braked hard. Phones were raised. People filmed, as if this were just a freak occurrence, a one-time incident. But it wasn't. The next crack split a building in half. I turned just in time to see the facade of a 20-story office tower peel away like paper, revealing dozens of stunned faces before a massive trunk surged upward through the core, pushing steel and glass aside like it was nothing. It kept growing, faster than made sense. Bark splitting, stretching, limbs punching through rooftops, vines reaching across power lines and choking them in seconds. I ran. People were already scattering in all directions, but the roots didn't care. They followed no pattern, no logic. They erupted from manholes, sewer grates, storm drains. One curled out of a subway entrance and dragged a train car half into the street before letting go. The sounds were sickening. Steel groaning, concrete splitting, screams, then silence. Within an hour, the city was unrecognizable. The tree had taken the center, what used to be the financial district, and now it stood like a god of rot and rebirth. Its canopy stretched hundreds of feet into the air, black leaves shimmering with an oily sheen, thick branches twisted around buildings, pulling them inward like bones cracking under pressure. And the roots, they didn't stop. They dug deep, feeding, growing, searching. I made it home somehow, or what was left of it. My apartment building was still intact, but half swallowed by a wall of bark that had grown over the east side, like ivy on steroids. It was warm to the touch, pulsing faintly, and when I pressed my hand against it, I felt something that wasn't wood. It was like touching the chest of a sleeping animal, alive, aware. That night, I didn't sleep. The city hummed, low, deep, biological. The power grid was gone. No phones, no internet. But outside, everything glowed faintly with the same orange light pulsing through the roots, as if the city itself had a heartbeat now, and it wasn't ours. In the morning, the voices started, not from outside, from inside the walls. They spoke not in words, but in something deeper. Memory, emotion, whispers that felt like déjà vu. I couldn't understand the language, but I understood the pull. I stepped outside and walked toward the tree. I wasn't the only one. Others were there, dozens, maybe hundreds, all walking slowly, calmly, as if drawn, some barefoot, some weeping, some smiling like they'd just been told a secret no one else would believe. We passed the wreckage of cars and broken windows. The roots had stopped attacking. Now they were simply present, curling around structures, fusing with the ground, growing moss and strange mushrooms with blinking lights. The base of the tree was massive, wider than a stadium. Its bark was smooth in places, rippling in others. There were openings, huge ones, like cave mouths framed with teeth of wood. Inside, darkness and light at once. A smell I can only describe as thyme and soil. Some people walked straight in. Some hesitated. Some touched the bark and burst into tears. I stepped closer, unsure why my feet kept moving. And then I heard it. A voice. Not outside. Inside me. It didn't say my name, but I felt it know it. It didn't command, but I felt compelled. It didn't threaten. It welcomed. And I realized I wasn't afraid. I was curious. I reached the entrance. The darkness within was warm, breathing. And as I crossed the threshold, I felt something shift behind my eyes. Not pain, not confusion, recognition. The tree knew me, and I had no idea what that meant yet. Crossing into the tree felt less like entering a structure and more like falling into a memory. The moment I stepped beyond the wooden threshold, the world outside vanished, not faded or grew distant, just ceased. There was no sound of the city, no breeze, no echo, only the feeling of being swallowed. But it wasn't dark. The walls inside the tree glowed faintly, not with light, but with something like awareness. The texture of the bark changed as I walked deeper, some parts smooth and warm, like polished wood, others soft and damp like moss. And in some places, I could see movement beneath the surface, like veins beneath translucent skin. I wasn't alone. Others were walking too. Some ahead of me, some behind. We didn't speak. Maybe we couldn't. Words felt irrelevant here. Our footsteps didn't echo. The tree absorbed every sound, like it had no interest in noise, only presence. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, and I stopped breathing for a second. It wasn't hollow, it was layered. Like an organic tower built in reverse, each level of the tree curled inward, forming a stacked spiral of biomes that pulsed and shimmered with their own logic. The lowest level below me looked like a ruined city grown over with vines the size of subway trains. Above that, a forest, no, a jungle, dense and alive, where plants moved when you didn't look. And higher up, something crystalline, refracting light that didn't exist. There were no stairs, no elevators, but I saw people moving up and down, slowly, as if gravity didn't apply here the same way. Some floated, some walked on walls. One woman stepped into a membrane of light and vanished upward like smoke. I looked around, unsure what level to choose, and that's when the tree spoke again. Not in words, in feeling. A pull, gentle but absolute, drawing me downward. I stepped onto a fleshy bridge that unfurled beneath me like a tongue, leading to the level below. The city inside the tree was ancient, not just old, forgotten. Cracked stone towers wrapped in vines, windows with melted glass, doors half consumed by moss, and everywhere, roots, growing through cars, emerging from rooftops, pulsating in the streets like veins in a sleeping giant. I wandered for what felt like hours. No clocks, no sun. The light came from above, diffused through the open ceiling of the level, filtered by hanging moss and glowing fungi. Every now and then, I'd see someone in the distance, moving with purpose. No one spoke. No one rushed. They simply explored. Or maybe obeyed. At one point, I stopped near a pool of dark water and saw something reflected that wasn't me. It was my body, but older, tired, covered in symbols carved into the skin, like tattoos written in a language made of breath and time. I blinked. The reflection changed. Now I saw myself curled beneath a root, asleep, as if the tree had cradled me. And then it changed again. I saw me as I was now. But my eyes were glowing, and something pulsed inside my chest, like a second heartbeat. I backed away from the water. It remained still. The tree was showing me possibilities, or futures, or maybe versions of myself it had already grown somewhere else. As I walked deeper, the walls began to whisper, not in human voices, but in the rustle of leaves, the creak of bark, the breath of roots shifting in distant soil. It sounded like thought, like language just before it becomes speech, and I started to understand it. Fragments at first, not words, but ideas. Memory is nourishment. You are seed. You were already chosen. I stopped walking. Seed? I looked at my hands. They were trembling. Not from fear, from resonance. I was beginning to match the rhythm of this place. My breath timed with its pulses, my heart with its flow. I could feel something growing in the space behind my thoughts. A hunger, not for food, but for meaning. That's when I saw the woman. She stood at the edge of the biome, near a tree that glowed with soft blue light. She wore clothes that looked woven from vines and light. Her eyes had no whites, only amber, wide and curious. She didn't speak aloud, but her voice bloomed in my head like scent. You made it past the first layer. I asked, "How many are there?" She smiled. Enough to remember, too many to return. She turned and began walking into the jungle beyond. I followed, and the moment I did, the root-covered city behind me vanished into fog. I didn't look back, because I knew. The tree was taking me deeper, and the real growth was just beginning. We walked for a long time, the woman and I, though neither of us made a sound. The jungle within the second layer was impossibly vast, dense, with shifting flora, some glowing softly, others coiled tight as if listening. Strange creatures moved through the underbrush, never fully seen. Occasionally, I caught the glint of multiple eyes, the flicker of scales that shimmered like oil, or wings that beat with no sound at all. But nothing attacked, nothing ran. This place didn't feel like a wilderness. It felt like a system. The woman guided me wordlessly, her steps deliberate, her form almost merging with the path. It was hard to tell where she ended and the tree began. I tried to ask her name once, but when I spoke aloud, my voice sounded foreign, out of tune with the place. She simply looked at me with those amber eyes, full of patience, and kept walking. I stopped trying. Eventually, we reached a clearing. At its center, a massive knot of wood and root, gnarled like an old heart, the size of a house. Vines hung over it like veils, and in the silence of the moment, I realized the sound had changed. The constant rustle of leaves and ambient hum of the tree had deepened, shifted into a low, rhythmic thrum that came not from around us, but from within the knot. The woman stopped at its edge. She turned to me and placed a hand over her chest, not her heart. Lower, over her stomach. Then she pointed at me, then at the knot, and backed away. I was alone. Something inside the knot was alive. Breathing, I stepped closer. Every part of me resisted. My skin buzzed, my teeth ached, my bones whispered to turn back. But I didn't. I placed my palm on the surface of the knot, and the bark beneath my hand grew warm, then hot, then soft. And then I was pulled inside. No transition, no door, just through. The world inverted, and I fell. Not downward, inward, like collapsing into thought. When I came to, I was no longer in the jungle. I was somewhere else. Underground, maybe. It was dark, but the darkness pulsed, like the inside of a living organism. Roots surrounded me, pulsing with slow energy. My body felt weightless. My mind, crowded. Something was here with me. Not a presence. A being. And it spoke. Not in sound. Not even in thought. In memory. I saw flashes. Images not from my life, but from others. Cities long gone. Fires swallowing buildings. People kneeling at the base of trees and disappearing into bark. Roots threading through ruins like fingers searching for pulse. The memories weren't from the tree. They were from everyone the tree had ever consumed. And now, it wanted mine. I felt it reaching, gently, not taking, asking, like the slow stretch of soil around a buried seed. and I let it in. My childhood bloomed through the walls, my mother humming in the kitchen, the texture of my first toy, the way the rain used to sound on my window when I pretended not to cry. Then it reached deeper, my regrets, my fears, the face I had forgotten, the thing I almost became when I lost someone I loved. And the tree responded. Its walls shivered, roots pulsed brighter, and for the first time, I heard its true voice, not sound, not language, a feeling older than words. We remember you. I tried to speak, to ask, what are you? But I had no voice, only thought. So I asked, silently. The answer unfolded like a story made of breath and bark. We are what comes after forgetting. I saw visions of civilizations buried beneath forests, of cities that grew too fast, too far, without roots, of people who forgot what they were made of, bone, dust, story. The tree was not vengeance. It was balance, not punishment, preservation. You called us. You always do, when the world forgets what matters. And suddenly, I wasn't in a hollow chamber anymore. I was in the middle of a city street. The same city I had known, but abandoned, ruined, covered in moss and silence. Roots curled through broken windows. Leaves grew through floorboards. The tree had not destroyed the city. It had reclaimed it. I saw people standing still, faces calm, as roots wound around their limbs, not trapping, but embracing. They were becoming part of it, not dead, not asleep, remembered. Then I saw myself, standing in a mirrored wall of bark, eyes open, mouth closed, listening, and the voice said one more thing. You are not here to watch. You are here to grow. I reached out, touched my reflection, and woke up somewhere new. I awoke in a place unlike any other part of the tree I'd seen so far. It was bright, not with sunlight, but with something warmer, older, like the inside of a thought that still remembers how to dream. I lay in a bed of moss that pulsed gently beneath me, rising and falling like breath. The air smelled of flowers I didn't recognize, but instinctively trusted, sweet and earthy, tinged with a sharpness that reminded me of the way memory stings when it's too vivid. Around me was a garden, not man-made, not random. It grew with intention. Each plant had purpose. Rows of vines that sang when the wind touched them, petals that opened when I approached, trees with leaves shaped like hands, some reaching upward, some resting against the ground like they were tired of holding on. I stood slowly, feeling light, but not weak, and then I saw them. Markers, dozens of them. No stone, no engraving, just smooth pieces of bark standing upright from the ground, one for each small patch of soil where the plants were most alive. They didn't feel like graves. They felt like memories, anchored into something more enduring than flesh. I walked past one, and it whispered, not with sound, but through the wind brushing my skin and the texture of the bark under my fingers. A name, not one I knew. But someone did. I understood then. These were not people buried here. They were identities, versions of self that had been left behind when their owners finally stopped pretending. The garden was where the tree stored what others let go. A woman sat near one of the memory markers, weaving something from golden vines. Her skin was pale green, her hair woven with thin tendrils that moved slowly, lazily, like they were underwater. She looked at me and smiled, like I'd taken too long to arrive. "You found the voice," she said, not as a question. "Yes." "Then you're ready." "For what?" "To choose." She gestured around the garden. "To let go of what you were." "I don't know what I am," I said. and it came out quieter than I meant it to. She nodded, as if that were the first honest thing I'd said. No one does at first. I walked to another marker. This one shimmered slightly when I touched it. I closed my eyes and a vision bloomed. A boy running through a sunlit field, laughing, free, chased by a shadow that never quite caught up. The moment felt like it had belonged to me once, but it didn't. It belonged to someone who had stood where I stood, breathed what I breathed, and left a piece of himself behind so the tree could hold it. "What happens if I leave mine here?" I asked. "You don't lose it," she said. "You grow past it." But who do I become? The part of you that doesn't need a name. That scared me more than anything. No name, no identity, just what? She stood, walked over and placed her hand on my chest. Her touch was cool, grounding. "You've already outlived the version of yourself you thought was real. That's why you're still here." I didn't want to accept it, but I knew it was true. I looked at the garden again, and I understood. Every marker was a person who had walked the path I was now on. They hadn't died. They hadn't disappeared. They had simply shed the skin of who they used to be and allowed the tree to carry what mattered forward. I turned back to the woman. "What if I want to remember?" She smiled sadly. "Then remember, but not as a prisoner, as a gardener." I sat beside an empty patch of soil. The moss beneath me stirred, welcoming. I thought of everything I had been, my childhood, my regrets, the fear that had followed me through every layer. I thought of the moment I stepped into the tree, the first time I heard it speak, the first time I felt like I wasn't alone in my own thoughts, and I let it go, not by forgetting, but by planting it. The soil accepted it eagerly, and a sprout pushed through almost instantly, small, glowing, fragile. Mine, not a grave, a beginning. The woman stepped back, her eyes now gleaming. "You've done what few ever do," she said. "You chose to grow." I stood. The garden around me shimmered, the names on the markers glowing softly, like stars blinking on one by one. And then I felt it. The city, not as it had been, but as it had become. Alive, waiting, calling. The tree had one more place to show me. The deepest layer, the one no one spoke about, where the city's heart waited. And I knew. It was time to go there. The path to the final layer wasn't a door. It wasn't even a descent. It was surrender. The moment I stood at the edge of the garden and closed my eyes, the tree responded. Not with sound, but sensation. My breath synced with something deeper beneath me, older than language. The roots shivered gently underfoot, and the moss I stood on curled softly around my ankles, like it was saying goodbye. Then I dropped, not through space, through self. Every layer I had passed through folded away behind me. The jungle, the memories, the city swallowed by bark. All of it compressed into silence as I sank into something warmer, denser, slower. And then I was standing. The heart. I knew it before I saw it. I could feel it. A massive, living pulse that vibrated through every part of the tree and echoed inside my bones. The chamber was vast and hollow, like a cathedral carved into the roots of the world. The walls were smooth, glistening with sap that pulsed in time with the beat. The air was thick with the scent of earth and time, sweet, damp, and powerful. At the center of the room was the heart itself, not shaped like a human heart, not mechanical, but organic, raw, alive, a pulsing mass of root, amber, memory, and movement. It didn't beat like a drum. It breathed like the planet itself, and surrounding it were hundreds of people, or things that had once been people. Some stood with eyes closed, hands outstretched, whispering in unison. Some had begun to change, bark growing from their shoulders, vines threading through their hair, eyes glowing faintly with the same deep orange light I'd seen in the roots the day the city was first taken. They weren't trapped. They were rooted, connected. One of them turned and looked at me. Her face was half covered in leaf veins, but her expression was calm, joyful even. "You made it," she said. Her voice echoed without sound. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do," I whispered. "You already have. You listened." I looked around the chamber. The heart was pulsing faster now, responding to my presence. "You were the last," she added. "The tree only opens fully when all the parts remember themselves." "All the parts of what?" "Of the city. Of us." The truth bloomed in my chest like fire. The city hadn't been consumed. It had been reborn. This wasn't destruction. It was reclamation. People who had lost themselves, through noise, through grief, through forgetting, had been offered a chance to remember, to return not to who they were in name or job or body, but to what they were in essence. And the tree? It wasn't a parasite. It was a mirror. It showed what we buried, what we needed to unearth, what we could become if we stopped pretending we were separate from everything else. The heart pulsed louder, and I felt it asking, not demanding, but inviting, to become part of it, to stay, to be rooted. But I wasn't ready, not yet, and it knew. I stepped back. The woman didn't stop me. She smiled. "Even those who leave are still part of us." The floor beneath me shifted, and I rose, fast, lifted on roots and light and breath, drawn back through every level I had passed, through the garden, through the jungle, through the city swallowed in green. And then I was above, back at the surface, at the base of the tree. Morning, birdsong, quiet wind. And the city, though changed, still standing, covered in vines, yes, ruined in places, yes, but not dead, alive, and watching. I looked back at the tree. Its bark shimmered faintly, as if it had exhaled, and I whispered, "Thank you." I walked home, through streets wrapped in green, past buildings that breathed, and sidewalks that hummed faintly beneath my feet. The people I passed looked at me, not with confusion, but with understanding. Some had gone inside the tree too. Some were waiting to, and some, like me, had come back with their roots still trailing behind them. I entered my apartment. It smelled like earth now. I left the windows open and let the wind carry it in. I sat at my desk and opened a notebook. The page was blank, and I wrote, not a name, but a memory. The first one I'd ever had, the one I'd tried so hard to forget. And I wrote everything that followed, because now I knew. The story doesn't end when the city is taken. It begins when we let it grow through us.